So first of all, I just want to welcome everybody into the chat. We're very excited to be hosting our second SBS Speaker Series event of the spring semester. And today we're very excited to have our guest with us, Noelle Wyman-Roth. What I'll do is I'll introduce her and then we'll go ahead and get started. So Noelle is a research manager and evaluator with the Transdisciplinary Environments Group at Duke University's Nicholas School of the Environment, and she's also an instructor of graduate courses in qualitative research methods and environmental program evaluation. Noelle brings more than 14 years of experience leading qualitative and mixed methods research and program evaluation across environmental, education, international development, and health-related contexts, including NIH-funded studies, physician scientist development programs, and public health initiatives. More and specific to our talk today, she is a NVivo certified platinum trainer for over a decade, and she regularly supports research teams at universities, federal and state agencies, and global organizations to strengthen the rigor, transparency, and efficiency of their qualitative analyses. So I'd like to make a warm welcome to Noelle as you join our colleagues here at the School of Public Health at the University of Memphis.
Thank you so much, Alex. And I'm so pleased to be invited. I'm thrilled to be here today. I'm excited to get started. So today I'm really focused on introducing you to how to do text analysis with NVivo. So this will cover the basics of the software and then focus in on the tools that support text and coding transcripts. So we'll start with this best practices for basic NVivo use, things that you need to know to use the software successfully, no matter what, and a quick tour through the software itself. And then I'll talk about how you work with interview focus group transcripts. And then we'll touch on code hierarchy best practices or coding schema or codebook development. It may seem premature, but it's really fundamental to making sure you get the most out of the software once you're towards the end of your analytical process. And then I'll touch on some queries that explore text for you. So hopefully by the end of this, you'll have a strong sense of what the tools are that are available to you in NVivo and how you might use it to support your work. So just a little bit more about me. This is my crew, it's my partner Scott, my kiddo Ellis. And when I took this picture last year, it had been the first snow in like 3 or 4 years, and now we're just like, oh, we're done. No more snow. But we were very excited in this photo and I like it, so I still use it. As Alex mentioned, I currently work at Duke University. I've spent large chunks of my career at Duke in various capacities. So I'm back there again, working for a group that looks at environmental justice, especially working with Indigenous groups in the US and abroad. And previously, I worked in international development evaluation at the Cloudburst Group. I also teach at the Nicholas School, and I do this side hustle. So I'm a certified NVivo trainer. I do it because I like it. I like to see the light bulbs come on. I like to empower you to do the cool work that you're planning to do. Um, so that's me. Let's talk about NVivo. NVivo is a qualitative data analysis software that organizes and supports the analysis of your data. So if you're brand new to qualitative analysis, or perhaps if you have a background in quantitative data analysis, your use of a data analysis tool may have looked a little bit different previously. In NVivo, really what it is an organizational database that allows you to bring together multiple kinds of data and analyze them using codes, so that you can interpret the data on the back end, right? So you then put it back together, synthesize and interpret and write up your findings. And organization is no small feat, but we as the humans have to do the analysis part. We're the ones who break it apart and decide how it goes back together. It is platform specific, so to support both the Mac and the PC users in the house today, I will be sort of switching back and forth. If at any point you are confused, let me know. They are starting to look and be more similar, but they still have distinct differences, and so I want to name those and make sure that Mac users feel supported and PC users feel supported too. I myself am a Mac user, but I have access to a virtual machine, so I can sort of do swipey magic and go back. And so it's project based, and that means that you have to have a project file to open on your machine. And so a lot of the software tools that we use, you log into it and your stuff is there. And that's not the case with NVivo. You kind of have to think about, local installations of things like, Word or PowerPoint or whatever, and you have to move those files around in order to access So that's how this works. Things that it is not. It's not going to spit out the answer for you. So it has AI add-ons that I don't use, and I'll talk about them in a minute. It has some algorithm-based and machine learning capabilities. It doesn't have a chatbot interface, not fully integrated with AI. I have explored qualitative data analysis software that is fully integrated with AI. I'm happy to speak to that if it's of interest. Um, but it does have some of these automated tools that can speed things up, and I'll give you my unfiltered opinion on them if you want to know more. I don't think that they're that useful at the end of the statement. It's started to add in more statistical capabilities. Again, I have thoughts on that about their utility, especially when you're quantifying qualitative data and trying to do descriptive stats on them. But the important thing to know is that if you put quantitative data in, which you can, it will not do statistics on it. It will maybe make some percentages, and that's about it. So if you want to do stats, you do it in a different software. It can bring in SPSS data formats to match up with your qualitative data. There is a cloud-based add-on. It is not inherently cloud-based. There are other software packages that are. It is a local installation that's good for data security. It can be challenging for collaboration. So there is that add-on, but you can collaborate in sort of an asynchronous merge process. And again, if there are questions about that, I'm happy to field them. So there are two versions, Mac and PC, and really what I need you to take home from this is that not all the features that are in Windows are available in Mac. It is about 85% of the way on par with the Windows version, the Mac version is. All the core features are there. It's missing some things. So again, in today's session, I don't think it'll really come up, but I want to, sort of clarify for Mac users so that you know what you're getting into. I tend to analyze data on PC despite being a Mac user, but I've started to use Mac more for some basic coding techniques, and I think that's fine. There are a number of add-ons that you can choose to purchase when you get NVivo. And I will tell you, I don't have any of them, and I'm still a heavy NVivo user. So I mentioned the collaboration cloud. That is sort of a cloud-based add-on, so you can do real-time collaboration. You can do collaboration without of it. It's just asynchronous. There's a transcription tool. I use different tools. Citavi is a reference management software that integrates with NVivo. I use Zotero. I prefer it. But it is available if you want something more deeply integrated. And then there's that AI system as well. So you can work with lots of different kinds of data in NVivo. So this is a Lumivero, the company that makes it visual. And so I've highlighted the Lumivero products here at the top. And then all of the other squares you can bring into the PC version and the Mac version, except for the orange squares are PC only. So for instance, YouTube data can only come to PC. And then for things like a direct connection to Qualtrics or SurveyMonkey, or even things like OneNote or Evernote, that's only through PC. But if you can get data into an Excel format, you can bring it into NVivo. If you can get it into a PDF or Word document format, you can bring it into NVivo. So just wanted you to be aware that there are certain data formats that you can work with. And if it's not in that format, then get it in that format and you can bring it in. Okay, so I'm going to get started with an NVivo tour. I have to reshare my screen. And I will say that I totally understand if you want your cameras off and you would like to be a black box. I'm cool with that. It's helpful for me to feel like folks are engaged if you have your camera on. So if you can turn your camera on, I welcome that. That would be fantastic. If you need a break, I also understand that. So now I've moved over to the PC version of NVivo. I'm going to get us started here. So here we have recent projects on the left-hand side of the screen. I think it shows you 3 to 5. And so these are the things that I've been working on. A point of confusion for new users is that if your project isn't there, where is it? So one of the important things to do is to pay attention to where you save your project. There's also a couple of sample projects. The multi-method sample project is the one that I'm most familiar with. I don't think I'm going to spend any time in it today. I can pull it up if we have time at the end, but it's a nice way, it's a really useful learning tool to see what a more complete NVivo project looks at towards the end of data analysis. And it so happens that it's a Duke University Marine Lab project, and I ran into the person whose data it is. It's real data. It's Lisa Campbell's data. She was in the hallway the other day, and it's just because it's a small world. So this is the sample data that I will be working with, and the sample projects included with every download of NVivo. I'll start by creating a new project, and so I will call this University of Memphis SBH demo project, whatever you want to call it. So if you're following along, name it however you like. And the important thing is to note where it's saving. So here, this is defaulted to my downloads folder. I can park it on my desktop. I can park it in a different folder. At Duke, we use Box a lot. If you have Google Drive installed, you can use that. It doesn't love to sort of sync real time to the cloud. So from a stability perspective, you can do it, but it's sort of better to back it up there. You can set your text content language. It's default set because of when I set it up. I said I'm in the US, so it's default to English in the US. There's a limited number of languages that you can set the text content language to, and that's for the automated tools in NVivo. If you can read it, you can code it. So even if the data that you have isn't in one of these languages, you can bring it in and code it. It's just that if it's not in one of these languages, NVivo can't read it for automated text search queries and things like that. All right, next. So it will gives you the option to auto-save the project. And if you do that, then your undo is disabled. I have a pretty strong backup policy that I do. So I leave this at no, and then I do a sort of daily backup process so that if something crashes, then I can, recover it pretty easily. And it will display a save reminder every 15 minutes, but know that your project is never truly saved until you close out or create a backup copy. So I've actually recently had a student who left it open all winter break and her computer did a restart and she lost everything. So don't do that. Every day, close it down and make a backup copy. There are project recovery files. It's not as good as, Microsoft Office here, but if you do have a crash, sometimes you can recover some of your work. It's just good to know where those are. It's in your documents folder. So that's the PC version. Let's let it get rolling. There we go. So I'm your tour guide today. So we will skip the automated tour. So here in NVivo, it is designed to sort of look and feel like an Office product. It's kind of meandered a bit over recent years, but the way that it's designed to do that is you have some starter organizational areas over here on the left, kind of like Outlook. Right? Each one of these is a folder. So we have the data area, and there's a folder for your files. And the files are, anything that you can bring into NVivo, right? More on the purple area here in a minute. And then up here across the top, we have a context sensitive menu. Sometimes new tabs will pop up, just like if you're working in Word or something like that. And then an important thing that I mentioned is that making backups. So there's no save as feature in NVivo. There's the copy project feature. So it's a true backup. So in Word, when you're in document A and you save as B, you return to your document after you saved it as B and you're in document B, right? Here, if you're in project A and you come in and you do a copy project and create project B is sort of living somewhere else. You're still in project A when you do the copy project. So from the file copy project, this is where you can convert to the Mac version, do that sparingly if you're working cross-platform. Best recommendations to get everybody on the same platform. But you can also just make a backup copy. And this is where you would tell NVivo, okay, on my desktop, I'm going to let's name it backup copy and today's date. Okay. I do that before I close every day. If I've spent 2 hours coding an interview, I do a backup copy then. So make backups early and often. And then if you do get a crash, then you won't lose as much work. So there are lots of ways to do things in NVivo. You can often do things through the ribbon, through right click, through a keyboard shortcut. Sometimes there are multiple, clicky ways to do things. So just keep that in mind as we move through. You'll see me be a right clicker. In terms of some best practices, so I want to talk about some of these different tools by way of giving a tour so that you know what exists and how to use some of them. or what they might be used for. So over here on the left-hand side, I mentioned that we have a folder for all of our files. And so there used to be a little folder icon over here. It's not there anymore, but you can create subfolders under files. So all of the data that you bring in comes in as a file. And then you can right click and create subfolders for different data types. So let's imagine you have interviews, and I'm thinking about a project that I was looking at yesterday, and they had policy documents. My best practice for creating folders for your data is different folders for different data types. So if you have a survey, that's a different data type. If you have focus groups, that's a different data type, right? So you would separate them out. Under file classification, so there are two kinds of classifications. When you hear the term classification in NVivo, I want you to think descriptive or quantitative data. This is categorical or otherwise quantitative information. So the term classification always is about quantitative data. Two kinds of classifications. One is for files. It's typically reference information about the file. So for something like a policy document, it might be who the author was or the date it was published. For interviews, it is likely, when the interview was conducted, by whom, where, and so on. So that's tied to individual files. So you can add descriptive information for individual files. I'll come back to the second type of classification. I see the questions. Let me finish this area and I'll come to the question. Externals are not heavily used anymore. So externals are for any forms of data that you can not bring the primary data into NVivo. So a good example might be a physical book. So as NVivo has expanded the data types that you can bring in, you can typically get your data format from like a PowerPoint into a PDF and bring that in, for instance. But a physical book, unless you have the ebook version, you're not going to scan all of the pages and bring it in. So you take notes on the physical book, and you can put the notes in externals to note that the primary data source is stored elsewhere, right? These are just notes on a primary data source. Again, not commonly used, but that's what they're for. Okay, Asma has a question. If you have a diverse group of participants, do you recommend using the folders for each group? No, I recommend using the other kind of classifications to keep track of that information. So folders for different data types, and hold on to your hats for other ways to organize your data. And if I don't answer your question, Asma, come back to me. All right, so that's the data area. Here in the codes area, codes are buckets that we use to analyze our qualitative data. So you can put bits of your transcript into the code. It has a label on the front. That's the name of the code. Usually as a definition, of course, how you are deciding what's in and what's out, and inclusion-exclusion criteria. So codes are one of the heavy lifters for data analysis in NVivo. And in my work, it is the heavy lifter. Like we were often coding our data, and then we might do some memoing and reflection as well. But we're really looking at codes to analyze that data. So more on codes in a bit. These three additional areas under codes. Sentiment is an automated coding technique that you can run in NVivo. It looks at keywords to decide whether phrases are positive or negative or neutral. And it will segment positive into very and moderately positive and negative into very and moderately negative. But if it's neutral, it doesn't code it. And so I find it has limited utility in that way because I end up with large swaths of data that are just not coded. So if I'm coding for positive or negative attitude, I do it myself. I don't use this automated tool. Relationships and relationship types sound like they might be really important. They're not heavily used. They are primarily used for the brand of social network analysis that NVivo can do. So you can do some creating of social networks, articulating of different types, and visualization of those networks in something called sociograms. Not a core focus of the software. So we're going to skip those. Now we're scooting down to cases. Cases and case classifications are really important to know and tough to wrap your mind around. So I'll give an intro to them, and I just want you to know what they are. We're not going to spend a ton of time on them today, but it does get to the answer to Asma's question. For cases are a special kind of code that collect all of the data. They hold all of the data related to a unit of analysis in your project. A unit of analysis may vary. It's often an individual. It might be a institution. It might be a, state or region, or it kind of depends. If you have descriptive data for a unit, for instance, a participant, then you have to have cases for that participant, right? So if you have 15 participants in your project and you have descriptive information about race, ethnicity, education level, etc., all of the standard stuff that we might gather, then you would set up a case and case classification system. So the case would hold all of their qualitative data, the interview that you did or focus group they participated in, and the case classifications hold all of their descriptive information. And using the two together links them up. Okay. So the important thing to know is that cases are big buckets for your unit of analysis, whatever that may be, and case classifications are for demographic or otherwise descriptive data about that unit of analysis. Questions? So to answer Asma's question, if you have a diverse group of participants, I would set up their demographic information using a case and case classification system. We also have areas for notes. The big tool that I use the most in here are memos. So memos are for things that are not data that are pertinent to your data. Things like research journals or meeting notes or protocols for how you're working together. I like to demonstrate these by introducing research journals as memos. And so I'm going to call this hello research journal. So I just did a right click and I said new. I realized I went a little bit fast, so I'll repeat it real quick. So actually, I like that button. Over here on the left-hand side of the screen, this is the list view. So if I have lots of memos, I will list them here. On the right-hand side of the screen, over here, I have the detail view. So when I'm referring to those, that's what I mean. I can right-click on the list view and say new memo. If I have one that exists outside of NVivo, I can import it into the software. In the detail view, I can now write in this just like it's a Word document. I do like to time and date stamp my memos. So in PC version that's Control-Shift-T. In Mac version, it's Command-Shift-T. And so then I can type in this like anything else. It's important to note, though, that if you close this, it does automatically save it. If you reopen it, you have to click to edit. So I can try to type in that, you can see me sort of banging on my keyboard, moving my computer around. But it's not going to work unless I click this little button over here. That's a little surreptitious. Click to edit, and then I can type in this again. Okay. That's a memo. These are other, again, the framework matrix I use on occasion. It's a way to summarize text across different cases and codes. So it's useful for outputting text in a tabular format. Annotations are like comments in Word, and so they're sort of tied to a snippet of text. And see also links are pretty cool. They kind of link together two different pieces of data or selections of text. So again, if those are of interest, I can provide some resources. Almost to the end of the tour, I promise. There are two kinds of sets, static sets and dynamic sets. Dynamic sets are quite advanced. You can use a tool called the advanced find to, and NVivo will kind of automatically run the advanced find and add things that meet those criteria to a dynamic set, right? So if you add a case that is, female identifying, for instance, and that's the set that you've set up, right? It will automatically park that in there. The static set you set up on your own, and I use static sets. It's another flexible tool, and so the best practice is important here. I use sets for managing my own processes, like this is my to-do list of things to code. I'll also use sets for flexible groupings of data. For instance, if I'm doing a longitudinal study, and so if I have data at T1, T2, T3, I put the transcripts in my interviews folder, and then I use a set to capture at what time point they were gathered. I might also capture that as part of a application additionally. And then queries. Queries are very cool. We'll come back to those, but there's text-based queries and there's queries that look at coding and analysis of your data. So you set them up and save them here, and you save your results here. And this is another specialized folder for saving results. For visualizations, the only thing it'll save down here are maps, although there are additional visualizations that we'll see. And then reports sound really important, but they're really just about outputting data in format. And so I can count on one hand, I think there are 3 times in the past 15 years that the report has been the appropriate output. It's really just like I'm outputting all of your coding. It's not doing any analysis for you. So again, I rarely use them. Phew. So let me scoot back over to the Mac version briefly, just so you can see what it looks like to create a new project for Mac users that are here. Again, they look very similar. So this is University of Memphis, I can spell, PH demo, and that's going in my documents or perhaps on my desktop. Put on documents. Then I will create my project. So in that little window that it just closed, you could see there was a list of recent projects. Similarly, we have the tour here, and I can full screen that so you can see it. Again, looks very similar. We have, data, coding, cases, notes, sets, queries, visualizations, no reports here. And then we have a context-sensitive menu. For backups, it's a little bit different on Mac. Do not hit this export project. I have students do this all the time. It takes it into a universal file type called a QDPX. And when you open it again, things may be a little bit weird. So instead, if you want to create a backup, choose copy project, and this will create, I just did this recently for this project that I'm working on. This will create a backup. So again, I can park this on my desktop. So that's the way that you create a backup copy here. Otherwise, everything else is pretty similar, right? In terms of how things look and how it's set up. So in the Mac version, I'm going to go ahead and import some data. It's 2 fingers down to right click in a Mac or command click. So I'll hit new folder and I'll do my interviews here. And I'll go to the import tab in the ribbon and choose files and tell NVivo I'm going to import some documents. So here I have sample data, and it's just sort of shared in my box structure. And I'm navigating to find my transcribed interviews. So the important thing here is for you to know where your transcriptions are saved and navigate to them when you're ready to import. You can import more than one at a time. So I'm importing, I don't know, this is 8 or 9, maybe 10. And it's going to think for a second. And for reasons unknown to me, the Mac version takes longer than the PC version. So while it's doing that, I'll repeat this process just so we have them in both places. Again, I can do import tab in the ribbon, or I can choose right click import items. And then I think I have it too on my desktop here. And choose open. The Mac version has gotten faster. You can see the little icon bouncing down here saying like I finished. All right. Now I have my data in, and I can open it up, and I have a list view over here on the left, and I have a detail view over here on the right. It preserves the formatting from the Word document. Most of this formatting, like the bolding and the italics and the color, is optional. It's important to know a couple of important things, double important, key things to know about setting up your transcripts. The first thing is do not do it in a table. So this is something that I see commonly. So I think I actually have an example here, something like this. And what's challenging about this is that you can't code across parts of the table, and it looks like it's going to let me do it, and it's not. It doesn't actually let me do it. So you can't code across the different parts of the table. And the other thing is that, look, it truncates the text a little bit, so you can't see all of it, and there's really not a whole lot I can do to fix that. So instead, you can keep the timestamps. So instead, the best way to format your transcripts is speaker, hard return, verbatim transcript, or speaker colon verbatim transcript. I typically do speaker colon verbatim transcript. And you can add the timestamps as part of that. If you want, I tend to remove them. That's just my preference. It's if you use a tool like Zoom or another automated transcription tool, it's probably going to be a little bit messy, and it behooves you to listen and clean it up before you bring it into NVivo. Now you can edit it in the software. So I can click to edit and I can, change the text here if I want to. I think it's easier to edit outside of NVivo and then bring the clean versions in. So that's my preference on that as well. The last thing to know is that in the Windows version, not in the Mac version, but maybe someday, you can do something called autocode based on questions in your transcript and use headers. So this little anchor text here, this Q1 connection down east is in heading 1. And then down here, I have Q2 connection down east. It's in a different color, but it's also in heading 1. And now I have Q3. This works for structured or semi-structured interviews. You can use, NVivo will use those headers as anchors in the text, and you can automatically code based on interview question in the Windows version. So something to keep in mind. And again, if you have questions about that, I'm happy to answer them. Or if you want more information. Other than that, again, the font, the color, that's all optional and up to you. Once it's in here, you're ready to code and create codes. You can sort of reorganize your screen a little bit. I strongly recommend using an external monitor for NVivo. It gets crowded quickly, and you'll see what I mean. And so from here, I click down to the codes area, and I get ready to create some codes. So you can create codes ahead of time as you go along. I think one thing NVivo really does well is in the way that the coding tools are set up, it allows you to be iterative, move things around, add, remove, merge, aggregate, all these things I'll talk about. So perhaps you know ahead of time that you're really interested in a specific code. So again, I'm going to create a new code just by right-clicking in this white space, saying new code. And I'm really interested in how they're talking about their connection to the area, right? How they're feeling about being connected to the land. I also know that these data were collected after a period of economic change, and maybe I'm interested in change. So I can create those ahead of time. You can also create them from the ribbon. Perhaps I'm interested in ways that they talk about the water. So you can see that I have 3 codes here, and if they have 0 files and 0 references, that means they're empty. So now I'm ready to get started with coding. Over here on the right-hand side of the screen, I start to read Barbara's interview, and I might select some of this text. I do leave interviewer or facilitator speech in here. There are tools in NVivo, that same sort of automatic coding technique to code by speaker. It's a slight variation of the tool to code by question to code by speaker. And so I can use that tool to remove interviewer voice from analysis, but I don't remove it from the transcript. So I've selected some text here. I'm being purposefully a little bit messy. It's like some, and I've just highlighted it. So I've drug and highlighted it, and now I get to tell NVivo which code to put it in. There are several different ways to do this. One way is through drag and drop. So if I click and hold and I get this, red circle with a line through it, I'm doing the right thing. I drag it over to this code called connection down east. The numbers change. I get 1 file and 1 reference. I had a little green pop-up here that told me that I coded. And I also don't see anything over here on the right-hand side of the screen, right? So I don't have any visual indicator that I've coded just yet. So to get that visual indicator, I turn on coding stripes, which is, I feel, one of the most underrated tools in the software. If I click coding stripes right here above the transcript, I can see that there are different options. So we're going to start right here. So there's all selected items, da da da. I like recently coded or current coding. Recently coded is my sort of longtime favorite. This tells me what I have been doing most recently. Current coding is new. I can demonstrate it. And it defaults to no colors. You can assign colors to the codes, or what I do is tell it to pick some automatic colors for me. So the most recent code is pink. And then let's see here. She's talking about, um, sense of community. Maybe I want to code for sense of community. So I can select this text. And another way to create a new code, over here it says drag selection here to create a new code. So I'm just going to drag it over and I can create a new code called community. And so I've created that new code and coded to it. And now that is got the pink stripe and I've got a blue stripe for connection to the area, right? So it automatically sets the colors. More on color coding in a little bit. I did want to flag though that based on the color that it's chosen, you can click a coding stripe to highlight it to see all discussion of community will be highlighted in that color, which is nice. I can change the orientation of the labels. It takes up more space so I've kind of gotten used to reading them sideways, but if you want them horizontal, you can do that. And so you have that flexibility. It's the same in Mac. So in terms of adding the codes and as well as looking at coding stripes. Any questions about any of that? In fact, let's do it.
And Noel,
So
a quick
in Mac,
question actually that I
oh
typed
yes,
into the chat just briefly.
the chat.
I noticed you had mentioned you can copy and paste from a Word document for some of the data itself, narratives. But
Mm-hmm.
would this also work the same, for example, if you downloaded a PDF clip from a newspaper or some sort of text?
Yeah.
Does that work the same if you want to highlight and color code?
Yes, asterisk. So if the PDF has recognized text, which most PDFs do, like unless you've scanned something from scratch or looking at a PDF from 20 years ago, the text is recognized and you can highlight it. So the way to test that is open in a PDF viewer and like click to and drag to try and highlight. If you can grab individual words, then the text is recognized.
Very cool. Thank you.
Yeah. And so one more thought on that front is that couple more thoughts is that in a PDF, you also have the ability to code by region. So you might, for instance, have an image, or if you think of a journal article, it might have a table or something in it. And so instead of selecting the text, you can sort of select that and treat it as an image. And so you sort of draw a box around it, and you can code that way. And then one more additional thought is that there is a browser plugin that I didn't mention called NCapture that allows you to collect, it works on Chrome, and it allows you to collect social media, and it allows you to collect any web page as a PDF. And that text does come in as recognized. So it's a nice tool that allows you to sort of grab web data in different formats and pull that in as well and work with it. So thanks for reminding me of your
Yeah,
question.
thank you for this.
Yeah. Okay, so Mac version, just to take a look at some recently coded, and I can do automatic colors here. And so I can select some of this text. And another way to code, if I don't have it ahead of time, which I don't over here, is to right click. So select all this, right click, code selection. I'm in the Mac version, by the way, to a new code. And I might call this connection to the area. You can add a definition here. And so now I have a new stripe here. And if I want to code to that again, I can. Mac has a quick coding light bulb right here. So you can click that. Or this is how I prefer to code Mac. I'll select this and I hit Command, and it's the button that's got the question mark on it. I never know if that's forward or backslash, but Command question mark. And then I can start typing the name or just arrow down and it'll code that there. So you can code to an existing code for right click. You can drag and drop. There's this little quick coding light bulb over here. And in the Windows version, there's a quick coding toolbar. So this one is about community as well. And so down here in the bottom, I can, if it wasn't already selected, I can select community, hit enter, arrow down, hit enter, codes it there. You can also click this code button to code there as well. That's my favorite way to code on a PC. I saw another question come through. Oh, for automatic coding, yeah. So I distinguish between, let me introduce a concept that I use. I distinguish between structural coding, and which is about coding according to the structure of the document, and thematic coding, so coding for the content of what people are saying. So I think the NVivo automatic coding tools for structural coding are pretty good. I think its automatic coding tools for automatically identifying themes, etc., not my favorite. Um, so Asma, what would it be helpful to see, or what are you most curious about? Because I can demonstrate both. Automatic coding for structure, like by speaker, or are you interested in seeing some automatic coding for themes, for instance? You can feel free to unmute if you want. Okay. So the automatic coding for themes only available in the PC version unless I'm getting my memory wires crossed. And if I do, I will correct myself later. Automatic coding for themes is, you can do it on one transcript at a time. You could do it on a code. You can do it. Okay, no worries, Hasma. That you can do it on multiple data sources at a time. So I'm going to select several of these interviews. So Margaret through William, and right click and choose autocode. Again, I'm in the PC version. So there are 5 different kinds of autocode, mix of structural and thematic. So this top one here is identify themes. So I'm going to put themes in quotes because it's actually common noun phrases, which might represent a theme in your data, but might not, right? So it might often themes are more interpretive than just noun phrases that are being used. And again, it depends on your discipline and your training and your background, your G, et cetera, as well. So with all those caveats, let's see what it does. So I'll click next. Then it says, oh, okay, it's got to download this additional package. So I recently had to reset up. This would be the same for you the first time you use it. So I had to reset up my virtual machine for PC. So that's why it's having me do this. And it doesn't take very long. So I can just keep chatting while it looks for all the stuff that it's found. And so here it's found a theme related to fishing. And what I do like is that it gives me the option to like include or exclude by unticking things or reticking them. And it does group all the fishing references together. So it's a little bit more sophisticated than like a text search query. So it's grouped together fish houses, fishing cottages, net fishing, bluefish, commercial fishing industry. But what these have in common is the word fish, whereas something might be a fish and something might be an economic activity. So it's a nice way to generate a lot of coding, and then it's sort of on you as the analyst to decide whether it stays there or it moves around. And this is also the nice thing to do in NVivo, where you can move around codes. So just because it's sitting underneath fish, maybe you rename the parent code, and maybe you put some of these underneath a, economic parent code, right? So you can use this process to generate the coding, but then you still have to sort through it. Then it asks how broadly or narrowly. It gives you 2 options by sentence or paragraph. You can always adjust this, but it's sort of manual. There's some automatic ways to sort of add coding context, but it's a little bit messy. So we'll say code by sentences here, and then it's going to create a subfolder. So underneath codes, I have a number of like codes in that folder. The ones that are represented here are in the codes folder. It's the same rule as I have for subfolders under files. So different folders under codes for different kinds of coding. So this is automated coding. We're going to put it there to start. You can integrate it with your main codebook in the main codes folder. I would also put, for instance, structural coding for interview questions into its own separate folder, separate from my main thematic coding folder. So I'll hit finish. Okay. then I'll have a bunch of coding. So it outputs some visuals, and this is a nice way for me to introduce some of the visuals it will create for you. I don't know that they're particularly helpful for this, but it's nice to know they exist. So this colorful box visual is called a hierarchy chart, specifically a tree map. It's something that they added to Excel in a relatively recent version. I want to say in the past decade or so, getting less recent as time passes. But the larger the box, the more coding there is. So from this, I can glean, for instance, there's the most coding to fishing, and then it gives me a sense of the hierarchy so that the little boxes inside, the lighter yellow, are nested underneath. So I like that, right? So I like the fact that it gives me some sense of amount and within this as well, maybe small fish and net fish appear to be about equal. Great. What I don't like is that it's kind of cut off, right? So the text is cut off. I can't read it. While we're talking about hierarchy charts, if you want to recreate this, the summary tab on the far right-hand side of the screen has the underlying data, and you can export this out to Excel and recreate it and make some more changes to things like colors, or the text itself. The size of the text is quite small in some of these. You have a little bit of control over color here. You can size it based on coding references or items coded. And you can zoom in and out, right? So you can do this top level one and then sort of zoom in. It's meant to be dynamic. I think it's not bad looking. It's just not the most useful. It is automatically created when you run the autocoding by theme to demonstrate what it has done, but you can also create it as a way of visualizing your coding structure, for instance. So that's a hierarchy chart. It's also being transparent for how it coded each interview. And I like that. It's a little bit truncated here, so you can sort of scroll to the side. In the matrix tab, for instance, I can also transpose it if I want to look at it shortwise. So both of these visuals go away when I close the tab. So if you want them, you would have to export them and save them. The hierarchy chart, you can export the image itself, like the colorful boxes, as a static image, or the underlying data as an Excel file. This would come out as an Excel file. The numbers, I don't typically save them, but just so you know. So what it's done here is create a bunch of codes in the auto-coded themes folder. And I have, for instance, area, and area is aggregated, which is we haven't talked about yet. We have some child codes. So we use code family terminology or parent and child codes. 3 levels down is a grandchild, 4 levels down is a great grandchild, or parent code, subcode, sub-subcode. But it's kind of more fun to talk about them as family. So I can open up the area code and see all coding to area and any of the subcodes because it's aggregated. Aggregation means that you code everything, it automatically pulls everything that's coded to a child code up to the parent. It's off by default when you're building your own codebook, but when you autocode, it's automatically turned on for those codes that it creates. So I can turn it off here by right click. And you can see there's actually nothing coded to the parent. Everything was coded to the children. And I can always toggle it back on here. Okay. Phew. Is that helpful? Any more questions about automatic coding? As Ozma asked, which practice would I recommend, aggregate or not? My favorite answer, which is it depends. It depends on the code book. It depends on what you're coding for. It depends on the rules you've set up for the code book. But this is a nice time to pivot and talk about code book development. So let's do that. Find my slides. Oh, I'm sharing this design framework. Before I do that, I'm sharing this design framework. It can help you think about what goes where. So I can get you a Word document version. I think I've moved it around since I took the screenshot, but it just helps you remember what goes where in terms of best practices in NVivo. I also have some formatting transcription do's and don'ts here saved as part of my PowerPoint, which I'll send Alex, and you all are welcome to use that for your reference going forward. So we already did this part. The autocoding does not utilize AI. It uses an algorithm to look for common noun phrases. It's keyword based. So the same for sentiment, the automatic coding based on existing coding patterns, which I'm too anal retentive to use because I want to code. But I've heard from folks that it's actually slightly more valuable than some of the algorithm based coding. Um, it uses machine learning. So it actually looks at what you've already coded and analyzes the words that are in there. And that's, I think, as far as I can go to explain machine learning. So it actually does try and learn from what you've already coded, as opposed to the algorithm-based coding, it doesn't try. But you can't, it's not a chatbot. You can't tell it what to look for. It's sort of using an algorithm. It's just a computer. Okay. How to organize code books. There are different ways to do this. It's often disciplinarily specific, methodologically specific. For instance, grounded theory has a very specific way that you should organize your code book, right? And sometimes, and especially if you're doing more applied work, which I tend to live in, there's no one way to do this. So there's lots of different ways to do it. So I introduce these ways to do it and to tell you that you can use broad brushstroke coding in NVivo for sure. You can code for, we did it recently in project, all mentions of resilience, and then break it down, open that code and break it down into child codes or subcodes about different kinds of resilience. You can also do the inverse, right? Code for really detailed things and then group them up into parent code. So this is more along lines of what you might see in a very inductive process or prescribed process for something like phenomenology or grounded theory again. You can do that in NVivo. So you can choose to group codes to associate them, sort of say like create a family that way, like these are related to each other. So I'm going to put them under a parent code. A way to do that, think about doing that, is that you might code for a particular interview question and create subcodes underneath that interview question that you've found in that you coded for in that interview question. You can do this in NVivo. I don't recommend it because you end up with like duplication, lots of different codes. I do recommend, and I steer people towards, unless you have specific constraints around this, a catalog approach to coding, where so you layer on codes, and I'll talk more about what I mean by that. So, but it's kind of like tagging in a catalog. Like this transcript, or this part of the transcript is talking about A, B, C, and D. And then you can use tools in NVivo to tell the software to say, oh, NVivo, go find me places where A and B overlap. Both of those codes are applied to my transcript, and it'll pull it out for you. So it makes the best use of these query capabilities, which are quite powerful, to query your data towards the end of analysis if you use a catalog approach, and that these other approaches don't necessarily lend themselves to. So it maximizes NVivo tools. So let's talk about how to build this. It can be counterintuitive for new coders or people new to NVivo. Again, I've been doing this for a long time, so I now sort of build hierarchies in this way. So hopefully I can help you start to think this way as well. The first best practice is that the child code is always a type of the parent code. So you end up with a bigger bucket, smaller bucket kind of structure. So when you're nesting a code underneath it, you might think, is this a type of the parent code? And if the answer is no, then don't put it there. Put it under something else. You want ideas that are related to each other to live together underneath a parent code. So for instance, you don't want codes related to attitude scattered across your hierarchy, right? NVivo automatically sorts your codes alphabetically. And so if you let it do that and you keep a very flat codebook with no child codes, you might have codes that are related to each other conceptually in lots of different places. That's a good time to reorganize and create a parent code, for instance, called attitude and park positive, negative, neutral underneath that. Avoid code duplication. So if you end up with 3 different codes called family, then it might be challenging to know when to use that family code. It increases the chances that you might code incorrectly. It also means you're likely not following the other two best practices. You're not using a catalog approach. Avoid creating codes that are very long in name. Instead, break things up into their constituent concepts and capture that complexity by layering them on. So instead of, water quality problems contributes to fishing industry decline and is a policy problem we need to solve, don't create a code that says that. Instead, break it up into things like policy problem, water quality, fishing industry decline. Avoid nesting too far underneath each other. So I already explained the code family concept. So the parent code, top level, child code, second level, grandchild, great grandchild. If you're following these best practices, you should not need more than 4 levels of codes. If you find yourself on the 5th, 6th, 7th, you're probably not following the other best practices. It's also really easy to lose codes, forget that they're there. So try to keep it long and lean as opposed to going too far wide. So if you don't follow these best practices, I'm going to show you what you might end up with. And this is what trainers call a viral code structure. And so what we have here are 3 core codes of interest related to the natural environment: habitat, water quality, and landscape. And we have some cross-cutting themes related to how people feel about them. So we have a positive attitude, negative attitude underneath each. And then we're trying to capture how they might be related to each other. So for instance, we have changes due to real estate development underneath habitat. We also have wildlife habitat code underneath landscape. The question might be, when do you use the wildlife habitat code underneath landscape versus the ones underneath habitat or the parent habitat code? What's the difference, right? And it can slow you down in coding, but it can also reduce the quality of your coding. For, under water quality, policy is not a type of water quality, but perhaps we're particularly interested in that. And we sort of dig into real estate development policy and water quality issues from real estate development policy. But what if the water quality issue is not from real estate development or policy? Then we have to create a new one. And so you end up with code proliferation because you're creating codes for every single instance of something. And here we only have 3 parent codes. With this code duplication we have, imagine we had 20 parent codes. We would have 20 positive attitude codes, and it makes it really difficult to see all instances of something in one place, especially when things are cross-cutting, right? So instead of this viral code structure, by the way, I like to tell a story about how I had many years ago, over a decade ago, I worked for NVivo, and I had somebody call me up and say, like, my software's running really slowly. I said, tell me about your project. They said, I have over 400 codes. It's like, whew, that's too many. It's going to slow down your project. But more importantly, how do you remember what codes you have? And so cognitively, I think the most complex code books should be between 120 and 150 codes. That's about all we can keep in our head at one time. Smaller is great. And I have had projects that go beyond that, but we do rounds of coding. So we start with our initial 150, and then we're like, oh, we're really interested in environmental concern. Let's break out a new code book for environmental concern. We're just going to focus on that, right? Then we add another code book to that. So instead of this viral structure, we recommend this catalog approach for a more powerful code structure. So we have some new parent codes here, and we can capture all of the same ideas and more. So if we have an issue related to water quality, real estate development, and policy, then we code it to all 3. If somebody feels negatively about that, then we also code it to negative. If the water quality issue is not related to real estate development, instead it's related to dumping or something else, right? Then you create a new code for that, and it makes it easy to add new codes and capture them. So let's play a little bit with reordering and reorganizing codes.
Hi, can I say something? Ask something?
Of course, yeah.
Can you show us when you code both coding the parent code and child code with negative or positive attitude, just to see like how it looks?
How it looks, yeah. So let me create some more codes. So I am in the Mac version now, and we have a code for connection to the area, and I'm going to create a new top level code in the Mac version. I'll call it attitude, just to recreate what we have. And underneath attitude. So now I've selected attitude. Instead of clicking on the white space here, I'm going to right click on attitude and go to new code. And I'll call this positive. If, for instance, I'm reorganizing and I have negative as a top level code here, I can always drag and drop onto other parent codes to move things underneath them, right? So I dragged negative from being a parent code onto attitude and it became a child code. And so here, for instance, I might see, let's create a new water quality code. And I happen to know that Barbara's interview down here talks about the hot summers, and then she talks about water quality. So here, let's imagine, I don't think it's particularly negative, but let's imagine what she's saying is negative. So I'm going to select this text, and then using my preferred method, I might code it to water quality. Okay, so I've coded that whole area of text. And then again, I'm going to imagine that she's saying something that's negative. And so I can put text in as many different codes that apply, that are of interest. So now I have the same area of text is coded to both water quality and negative. And then I can use query capabilities, a matrix coding query, a coding query. Crosstab query doesn't yet apply based on how I have the structure set up. But I could say, okay, NVivo, find me all the places where people talked negatively about water quality. And the tool that I would use for that is a coding query, right? Coding query is like a Venn diagram with as many circles as you want. You can say, okay, go find me this. It'll find those places where you have the coding in both of those codes, and it'll pull it out for you. You can save that result and work with it further. You can export it and share it with your chair or your friends or anybody you're working with. Okay. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Sure. Okay, so we already talked a bit about aggregation. Oh, so Asma asks, what about coding the same sentence with multiple codes? What is the best practice to reduce messiness? So that's a great question. That is, in fact, desirable in the catalog approach. So in a catalog approach, you layer codes to capture all of the nuances of the data that are of interest. You may have, I often have an area of text that might be coded to 5, 7 different codes, and that indicates richness, right? There's lots of things happening that are of interest in these data. It may look messy, but the advantage of that is, if they're talking about water quality, I can open up my water quality code and see all discussion of water quality. And then NVivo makes sense of that messiness by allowing you to sort of say, okay, NVivo, this area might have 5 different codes applied to it, but find me all the places where, code 1 and 2 are applied. I'm only interested in these 2 codes. Pull that out for me. So that's a coding query. Or a matrix coding query cross-tabulates your coding. So you can say, look at where all of these codes overlap with these codes. So it's a little counterintuitive. You might see it as messiness. If I have lots of codes applied to a sentence, I see that as richness. But that means that you are using a catalog approach well, that you have clear definitions, and to ensure rigor, that you're not just coding things haphazardly. I have been in projects where I don't think that the codes have clear enough definitions and that they're not analytically distinct enough. And so you just end up with lots and lots of codes on an area of text. So that is it's a gray area that you can wander into. But if you have a strong code book that is capturing the things that are of interest for you and using this powerful code approach, I would say 5, 7, maybe even 8 or 9 or 10 codes on something can be desirable. Is that helpful? Okay. So I showed you how to move things around. I showed you about aggregation, and I showed you how to create a child code. So now let's talk about text queries. I'm going to scoot over to the Windows version just to mix things up. There's one more tool I want to show you to merge codes together, but first I'm going to do the text. So I'm back in the Windows version, and I'm going to go up to the Explore tab in the ribbon, and the two text queries are word frequency and text search. So I like to start with a word frequency query because it can give you a sense of what's happening on a high level with your data. So it has lots of different ways for you to scope your query. You can search in all of your data or just certain folders or even just one item or combination of items, right? It defaults to pulling up the 1,000 most frequent. I leave it at that default. You can change it. It looks at words that are more than 3 characters long. It also has a built-in stop words list. So words like this and that are skipped, right? Them. This is editable. It's under options, and you can add words to it or remove words from it. Then it says, how do you want to group words together? The Mac version has all the same criteria, except it has fewer grouping options, which I'm frankly fine with. For grouping, it uses an algorithm to determine what will be grouped together. So exact matches keeps words like talk and talking separate. If you scoot it down to stemmed words, it groups talked, talking, talks, and talked together. Talk, I might have mixed them up, but words with the same root and different stems get grouped together. We often talk like that. I like that one. Any further synonyms, specializations, or generalizations, I think it casts the net too wide and starts to group things together that I may not put together, and you lose some nuance there. And so I don't use those. But even at stemmed words, I've seen it mess up, and you can't correct it. But for instance, it'll group community and communicate together. So it's just something to watch. And I'm going to let it run on all data and show you what it produces. So we're starting to run out of space a little bit. You can always undock a tab. And it's still saved. And make it bigger. Okay. So here, it shows me the top words, how long they are, how many times they appear. The weighted percentage accounts for being in different similar words groups. So because I left it at stemmed, they really shouldn't be in other similar words groups. So that's the weighted part of it though. And then it's telling me what words it's grouped together. So I appreciate the transparency here. So for instance, it's grouping think, thinking, and thinks together, fish, fished, fishes, and fishing, and so on. So this is, sort of helpful and interesting. But some of the words I don't really care about. So for instance, it's not surprising that east is the top word because it's in the name of the place and it's all over the transcripts. Okay? So I might choose to right-click here and add the word east to the stop words list. Don't count this word for me anymore. It's not helpful, right? So I'm going to add that to the stop words list and click OK. Nothing's happened yet because I have to rerun the query for that to take effect. Other words that I might consider, for instance, Henry is the name of an interviewer. So I don't want NVivo to count that word either. Okay. So when I rerun the query, it shows me that the top word is now people, think, fishing, knows, waters, like, just, change, living, and developments. Okay. Some of those are more interesting and meaningful than others. For the word like, I've probably said like a couple hundred times already today and in this call. Okay? People talk that way, but it might have meaning. It might mean that they genuinely like something. Same with just. So from here, you kind of take it with a grain of salt, right? It tells you, the word frequency query tells you what words are most frequently used, not which words carry the most meaning. That's more part of the coding process, right? Alex had a question about, is there an edit feature for language for this feature? What do you mean by that?
So, for example, if you were coding your data in Spanish, is this something where you could switch it to Spanish, and put in like speaking habla, whatever, in there instead of this or that?
Yeah. Yeah, so it's under project properties, I believe. I cannot keep straight what's under options or properties, but you can change things under both options and properties. So I would check there to change your text content language. But yes, this is specifically where if NVivo if you have data in a content language that NVivo can read, this is the tool that you can use with it, right? So if you have data in Spanish and you want to do a word frequency query in Spanish, switch the text content language and make sure it's set to Spanish when you start your project, and it will do this more correctly.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so another question, is this good for content analysis? Like how many times people mentioned a word that carries a case of negative attitude like jealousy. So the word frequency query just tells you what the top words are. The text search query allows you to search for those specific words or groupings of words at one time. So more on that. So I think the answer is that the text search query is the better option for what you're looking to do. But real quick, there are a number of visuals. It will create for you the most exciting one for folks, depending on whether you're over word clouds or not, is the word cloud. So it will create a word cloud from your data. This is the newest visualization it came out with. I can't remember if it was 14 or 15, but the closer to the center, the bigger the word, the redder the word, right? The orangey red words are the top words. You can change the style here in the ribbon under word frequency query. And so you can switch it, for instance, to this one. It's got a black background. But thinking, is it frozen? It's not an NVivo demo if things don't freeze at some point. All right, let's try this. Oh, great, it is frozen. It's just kind of dinging at me. Okay, there we go. So here we can see, I actually think that this one, we can tell the top words a little more clearly, the larger the words. This static image is exportable. So you can export the word cloud as a JPEG or PNG, park it in a PowerPoint or manuscript. But within NVivo, it's live to the data. So for instance, I can say, hey, I actually want to know more about how the word water is used. So I can run a text search query, both from scratch. So from the query tab in the ribbon, I can run a text search query, but I can also run it from within a word frequency query. So I can right click and run a text search query for waters. Here we go, back in the main window. And so this is what I'm saying might be a better tool to look for specific content words. And so it searched for water or waters. You can use that same or operator to group together multiple words. So maybe you're looking for water or waters or ocean or pond or lake. So you can come up with what your search terms are. The or phrasing is more inclusive. The and phrasing is more exclusive. So the and would, I think, look for words in the same transcript. So if you wrote and, it would look for those combinations of words in that transcript. Okay, so then I can rerun that query, looking at all of my data, and it's saying, okay, great. These are all of the transcripts in which those words appeared. At the bottom here, it gives me some high-level information. There, it appeared, one of those words, any one of them, appears in 9 files, and there are 73 times that one of those words appears. On the far right-hand side of the screen, excuse me, the reference view shows me the search term with a little bit of context on each side, 5 words. The search term is in black, and the automatically added context is in gray. The word tree is a visual that is nice to have a big image or big screen for. Maybe I will undock. Undock, please. Okay. So a word tree groups words into branches. So this looks at the actual content of your data and it says, okay, but preceding the word water is the word the a lot, so you know, and proceeding, we see a lot of discussion of quality. Oh, interesting. Maybe I wasn't already tuned into the fact that people are discussing water quality a lot. So that might be an interesting surprise for me. A couple more things about this. You can sort of click a branch and trace it through. Yeah, the water quality, period. That's the main thing, right? You can export the word tree as a static image. And again, within NVivo, it is live to the data, so we can keep digging. So again, you can decide to search for in a text search query, start with a new one and search for water quality. Or from here, I'm like, actually, I just want to like right click on quality, run the text search query, and it'll create a new one for me. So again, I could click text search query and type water quality into it, or I'm already kind of digging through this. I can just run it from there. The quotes mean it's looking for that particular search term, right? So if it said water qualities, it wouldn't pull that up. You would have to search for that separately, but we don't say water qualities that often. So it's looking for where people talked about water quality. So this is keyword based. Again, you can add more keywords here. So far, I want to take a quick pause. We have not saved the setup of our queries. This button here, Save Criteria, allows me to save that setup. So I can say, okay, NVivo, I'm searching in all of my data for water quality. Here's the results. I want to save the setup. Maybe if I add more transcripts, I can run this again. So this is water quality. It will save it in my query criteria folder. And it'll be down here on the left-hand side. This is saved. So the next time you run it, you have more data, it'll pull that in and find new instances of water quality for you. So it's still pulling in the word tree, so you can see it's created a new one for you. And then we've got the summary view, so you can see which transcripts the term water quality. All right, this is looking pretty good. I actually want to create a code. I want to save this and add it to my code book. And create a code called water quality. And the nice thing about this is I can be assured that I have every single mention of that, barring a typo or some other phrase that's being used. So this is a nice way, the text search query is a really nice way to do keyword-based coding, that you have control over the keywords. So before I do that, and here's an important difference between Mac and PC, and I'll demonstrate the Mac version. I want to spread the coding a little bit, because if I save the result right now, it'll just say water quality 19 times over and over again. It won't say the words around it. And that's part of the power of the qualitative data. What are people saying about water quality? You want to know that, not just how many times. So I'm going to tell NVivo, and in the Mac version, you spread after the fact. So if you're trying to follow along in Mac, you won't see this. But I'm going to tell NVivo to spread it to, so skipping coding reference, that's if you're searching in a code. Narrow context is 5 words on each side. Broad context is surrounding paragraph. You can tell NVivo how many words on each side. You could say 15 or 20, or the whole file. For me, I either do, it depends on the transcript, either narrow or broad. I'll go ahead and do broad here. I'll grab the surrounding paragraph. You can always pare it down or add text. Then I need to rerun the query. And here I can see, from Barbara's interview where she's talking about water quality. Wonderful. And then further, she's talking about water quality here. And if I go read the transcript, I can actually see that she talks about water quality in between, but she's not using the words. So you still have to go through and clean up and make sure that it's correct, right? So then I also have, I'll just go down to Charles. Charles is also saying, we have pristine water quality. That's great. I'm ready to save this as a code. So I'll hit save results. It's going to be called water quality, and it'll open the results for me. So the query criteria setup for the query is saved under query criteria, and the result is saved under query results. This is what a query result looks like. It's not editable. It's also not a part of my code hierarchy. So to make it editable and a part of my code hierarchy, I can copy, go up to codes, and I can paste. Great. So now I have a new code called water quality, and I can open it up and start to read through it. And here it says, here's what Barbara has to say, here's what Charles has to say, and here's just a question about water quality. And so for me, my next step would be to open Barbara's interview, which I can do by clicking this hyperlink at the top, or Anywhere in that's a selection of text from Barbara, I can right click and choose Open Referenced File. And here I'm back in Barbara's interview, and I've got my codes for water quality, and I can read through and say, oh, actually, this whole area is about water quality, right? So even though she doesn't use the terms, this text in between those two coding references, those are also about water quality. So I can just code it to water quality, and it doesn't double code it. So make sure you don't select auto-coded themes. It doesn't double code it. It sees what's already coded and it just adds more. And actually you can see the coding references went down because I joined the two that already existed. Okay, any questions about text search query and a PC? All right, let's do the same thing in Mac. I know we're running a little short on time. We have 5 minutes left. I think that's enough time to do this. So we're going to start by running a text search query on its own. We'll search for water quality. I can hit Save Criteria and then run the query. Same deal, we have the summary, the reference, search term in black, context in gray, and a word tree. Also exportable. If there were multiple terms here that you wanted to, switch it to, it's looking at water, the quality of the water, you can, in the Mac version, select it in the center. In the PC version, in the ribbon, there's an option to select it on the left-hand side to switch your search term in the word tree. You can automatically add context to, you can do that from the ribbon in the PC version. But so here I'm ready to save the result, but there's no spread to option. So when I save the result, it's just going to say water quality over and over again. So it's going to live in query results. Down here to query results, I will right click and choose copy, go to codes, and I've already got one, but I'm going to paste my new water quality code and it will be numbered. So it automatically adds a number. And when I open up my water quality code, as predicted, it just says water quality over and over again. So to automatically add that context, I can select some of these water quality references, right click in here and go to spread coding and choose broad to grab surrounding paragraph. So then I can just do that for the rest of mine. So Command A will select all that text and then spread coding, choose broad. Sometimes it doesn't do the last one, so you just kind of have to scroll down to make sure it's done. So here is when, again, I could open up, clean up the coding, but I already have a water quality code and I don't want to duplicate. So let's put them together. So to do that, I would use the merge code feature. So I would right click and choose copy, and the PC version looks a little bit different. And right click on the one I want to put it into and choose merge into selected code. It doesn't delete the original if you do that. So, and for reasons, again, unknown to me in Mac, you can't cut and merge. You have to copy and merge. But I do have a hot tip for you, which is if you hold down the Option key in this view, it adds this option, say, merge into selected code, removing original. That's what I want. It's not intuitive. So when you right click on the one that you're putting it into, after you've copied the original code, you hold down Option. It will say merge into selected code, removing original. One of the developers taught me that. In the PC version, let's imagine I have a second water quality code and I want to put them together. So in here, I can choose cut and I can choose merge into selected code. Click OK. Okay. So let's go back here. I think we covered that. We covered that. So that's what I have for you all today. We have a couple more minutes for questions if you have any. But it's been a delight to be here today and really enjoyed my time. And I'm, wishing you happy NVivoing. Happy to answer any more questions.
So any questions from our students and staff?
It looks like Ozma wanted me an overview of what I just did without repeating the steps. Ozma, can you clarify, is that the creating of a code for a text search query? Yeah. So to create a code from a text search query on, well, both a PC and a Mac, you need to save the results of the query, and it saves as a query result. Then you need to copy the query result over to your codes folder, so it becomes a regular code. It's not static. And then depending on whether you're Mac or PC, for the PC version, you add the context before you save the query results. And in the Mac version, you add the context after you copy it over as a code. So I have some links on the agenda that might help clarify that for you, but here's my email address. If you have a question, I'm happy to answer quick questions via email. Jorgen asks, is there a way to include synonyms when using a keyword search on a Mac? So for the text search query, yes, but you have to define the synonyms. So you could search for, I did that with water. So water or ocean or pond or lake or whatever it is. So if you have a list of synonyms that you know you want to search for, I would do that in a text search query.
Okay, well, great. And Noel, this has been a true pleasure to have you join us here at the School of Public Health this afternoon. I think that hopefully I can speak for all of you. It's been really insightful, and I think you've shown us a lot of tips and tricks along the way to help us with our qualitative sort of endeavors, if you will. I thought it was also great you mentioned and showed us both PC and Mac. I think this is especially helpful for our folks that don't use one or the other specifically. And so lastly, again, if we have any questions, we'll be sure to direct them to your email, and we'll have a recording of this video available sometime after this talk today, so that if you want to go back at any point, you're able to replay the messages and the different steps along the way. So again, thank you so much, and I hope all of you have a good rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.